Today on Blue Values TV, find out about what's happening in Placer County at the county level. Stay tuned. Welcome to Blue Values TV, a production of the Blue Values Coalition. The Blue Values Coalition is a nonprofit organization dedicated to informing, educating, and engaging our neighbors in the governance of our communities. Look for us online at bluevaluescoalition.org. Our guest today is Supervisor Robert Weygandt from the Placer County Board of Supervisors. Welcome, Mr. Weygandt.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today. Supervisor Weygandt has lived in Placer County for 52 years.
Right.
And has grew up on the farm that you still live on today outside of Lincoln.
Correct. Right.
We were talking earlier, it sounds like you must have seen a lot of changes in Placer County and Lincoln over the years.
It's been dramatic, yeah. The population of the county is probably 5 or 6 times larger than it was when I was a kid growing up. And when I was a kid growing up, it didn't change very much.
That's really amazing. Supervisor Weygandt is running for his 6th term on the County Board of Supervisors. So tell us, Supervisor Weygandt, why are you running for a 6th term? What do you hope to accomplish, and what's your vision for the future that you want to see for Placer County?
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me here. There are a few things that I want to finish that aren't quite complete yet. The key one is the Placer County Conservation Plan. It's an opportunity to really solidify that vision that you refer to. It will be a plan for a build-out vision for Placer County. On one hand, on the other hand, it will actually be a huge amount of shifting of federal and state governmental authority down to the local level in partnership with Placer County and the city of Lincoln, whereby when projects go forward, the environmental review process that is typically vested today with the state and federal government will be vested in the local government. So it will streamline our permitting process, make that much more cost effective. But it will also result in much better planning. We will have a significant area of permanently protected open space where the mitigation for the development will occur, and that will cause us to have a land development plan that really will reflect what the next 50 years look like.
Now this conservation plan, I've looked at that as well. It does sound terrific in terms of how it streamlines the process, as you indicate. You can get all of your building permits with like one-stop shopping effectively.
Correct.
At the local level. That's fantastic. Has that been in use for some of the projects that we've had around Placer County already?
No, we're not quite done yet.
Okay.
We hope by midsummer to actually go into environmental review for this project. It also requires federal and state environmental review, and then finish up essentially the contracts with the state and federal agencies after that, and then there'll be a couple of years of implementation. There have been cases like this in other parts of the country where they've done similar things, but actually nothing quite as comprehensive as what we're attempting. So it's been a long process, but it's very ambitious, and I think it'll yield huge dividends for us.
And that authority will then, for getting federal and state permits, would reside, you could go to the county level to get all of that?
Essentially correct. It gets a little bit complicated and technical, but essentially that's correct. There will be one conservation strategy for all of that build out. So when you come to the counter to propose a major project, just like today you deal with roads and wastewater treatment and water delivery and parks and schools, you will also deal with your environmental mitigation requirements. So it makes sense that that should happen, but we will also have a strategic plan and a layout as to where that mitigation will occur in Placer County so that we enhance and protect open space here in the county so that it's a better amenity to the people who live here.
Do you see, we have a fairly large population in the county, especially in the western part of the county, which still is in the service industry and is in retail, and those tend to be much lower paying jobs than the jobs that I think we want to bring more of here in Placer County. Is that a problem, and is there something that we can do to help those people along or to help transform our county into a little bit more affluent county?
Interestingly, I actually cut my teeth in public service way back, starting in the early 80s on the county's Economic Development Commission. At that time, it was called the Business and Industrial Development Commission. And after HP had come to town, the Board of Supervisors then wanted to try to see more of that kind of thing happen, again, in balance with the rest of the growth that was occurring. So the focus of that effort back then and still today is to try to maximize the creation of what we call primary wage earner jobs, but jobs that provide insurance for a family, medical insurance, and retirement for a family. One person in a family needs that kind of a job if they're going to have a healthy standard of living. So that effort is still underway today. We have the county's Economic Development Commission, which has a variety of members on it, including all of the cities are represented with one of their council members. I sit on that commission. But our focus is not only to recruit the kinds of companies that provide those kinds of jobs, but to plan such that we're attractive to those kinds of companies.
And that brings us to the next question, which is, Placer County is looking at bringing in 1 or 2 universities or colleges into the county, new colleges into the county. Would that help bring in more attractive business as well? And where do you stand on bringing in these new colleges into the county?
Great question. Not my comment on history, but a friend of mine who made this speech noted that the big influences in Placer County were obviously the gold rush, the railroad, also when Hewlett-Packard came to town. And I think these universities could have a similar kind of impact, an impact that would change the face of the county forever, but in a very positive way, particularly if we do it well. So there are 2 university sites. Both of them are in the county. It's important to note that the largest jobs center zoning is in the county, not in any of the cities, and that's called the Sunset Industrial Area. So California State University project is proposed in the Sunset Industrial Area. And then farther to the west and a bit to the south is the regional university site, which is actually an already approved project that is waiting for a university. And currently, Warwick University has expressed an interest in evaluating the site. So the 2 universities would be dramatically different. Warwick is in Great Britain. Several of us went back there last fall on a trade mission. It was a very encouraging meeting. They would, for the most part, look to attract different kinds of students as compared to a California State University. And I think both of those projects are excited about each other potentially being here together and mapping onto what we're seeing with William Jessup University, and great opportunity to work more closely with Sierra College.
So a lot of exciting things for the future, and then of course there's the long-term vision of a Placer Parkway, or that we may build in another 10 or 20 years as well.
Right. It'll take time, but it'll be phased. So hopefully the earlier parts we'll see those more.
So a lot of new development coming into the county and the district. Now, with all of this coming, and I can certainly see the value of schools and bringing in colleges, what about the concern of what is the water situation going to look like in Placer County and western Placer County? We're in the third year of a drought right now. Droughts are not going to decrease in frequency, at least not from any of the forecasts that I've heard. How are we going to deal with water issues, especially as we grow more as a county?
Another great question, and one, of course, with this drought, and particularly this year, that has caused us to have a lot of focus. So the county is not directly in the water delivery business, but it's critically important that we work closely with our partners who do that. So our biggest partner is the Placer County Water Agency, which is a separate government with its own elected board of directors. We also receive a significant amount of water. Today, it's mostly agriculture from Nevada Irrigation District, but they could provide water to the city of Lincoln also. And then South Sutter District provides ag water to my district on the west side. Roseville receives a significant amount of water from San Juan Water District.
And Folsom Lake.
And Folsom Lake, right. So if historical weather patterns stayed the way they have for the last 100 years, Placer County actually has more water than it needs at build-out. But we've got to make sure we have insurance, because obviously that may not be the case. California has always known droughts, and sometimes they're for a fairly extended period of times, and nobody knows what's going to happen over the next 100 or 200 years. So we have to be prepared for all of that with some of the expected changes that are happening. So we've come a long ways in sharpening those partnerships. I think, for example, all of the city jurisdictions, Rockland, Roseville, Lincoln, and the county are on the same page as it relates to the notion of conjunctive water use, which means that we use our surface water predominantly during wet years, but we use our groundwater during times like this. But we don't ever want to use one of those sources such that we completely use it up and it doesn't exist anymore. We have to make sure that as new development comes forward, we put in place the plumbing, the infrastructure, to make sure that we have backup systems and circuits that can backfill others. The water agency worked real closely and is working closely to make sure that Folsom Lake, fortunately with these recent rains, has come up quite a bit. Had it not come up, San Juan Water District would have been in a horrible situation because of its reliance on Folsom Lake. So on the whole, we're in good shape going forward, but we have to be prepared for adapting to changes as they come forward, and we have to make sure that we have good backup systems for all of the people in Placer County who rely on different sources of water.
Yeah, you mentioned possible natural causes of water shortages in the future if climate change happens and we end up in a drier time period. But then there are unnatural reasons too, and that one of the unnatural reasons may well be if the flows out of Folsom Lake need to increase to support the salinity levels in the delta, because we're pumping more water out of the delta to go down to Southern California. That would also put a strain on this county and our water resources. So besides worrying about just the weather, we've got to worry about water at the state level. We know that there's a shortage at the state level.
Yeah, and some of the state plans can be very worrisome, and we have to pay very close attention to that and be a player in that mix. Of course, we can't control the state, but we have to be at the table. And particularly as it relates to, in my district, I'm also very concerned to make sure that we perfect and protect agricultural water.
Right.
Such not only that it's available, but it's available at an affordable rate. It would be a horrible day in Placer County for all of our residents if we didn't have agriculture as a viable industry.
Placer County has been exemplary in planning for future water use. We did a fantastic project in the 1960s to provide the water storage on the Middle Fork of the American River. And that was a very far-sighted and smart thing for this county to do. It has served us very well. Are there other things like that you envision for water storage that we might need to do to provide for the next 50 years?
Possibly, but not so much. Because of that project and others, that really is the reason why we do have available water supplies, again, depending on what the state does and what happens with our weather and patterns. But we actually have a good cushion. So we should be able to go forward over the next 50 years and be whole. But the Middle Fork project was an incredible vision, and it's a great example because at the time, I think people, the strategy was that the water would be used mostly for agriculture, because nobody back then envisioned the kind of growth that we've seen. And that will be the future also. There will be unexpected things that happened and trends. But if we have the water and we have the ability to deliver it, we'll be able to put it in the right place.
Now, in talking about our expansion plans, somehow we've got to consider that a lot of the jobs that we are getting are not the quality of jobs that you might want to see, but we're getting a lot of lower paying jobs as well, especially in retail and so on, because we are developing a lot of shopping areas and stores and welcoming those into our neighborhoods as well. How do we provide housing for at that lower income level as well? Because they can't afford to buy the upper income homes that we might be building. Do we need to set up some zones where we have lower income housing? Or what is the plan for that?
The state actually requires in all of our general plans, cities and in the county, that we have a low-income housing element. And so that is a part of all of our general plans. It's required. And I think in Placer County there's been a good job of delivering those. My vision, my personal opinion as to how that ought to be implemented is that some of that housing ought to be in all housing communities, that it shouldn't be clustered in one particular place, but it should be distributed throughout. And Roseville's done a very good job of that, and I think Rockland has, and I think Lincoln is. Most of the residential urban development will occur not in the county, but in the cities. But in our large urban areas like the vineyards, we will need to do the same thing, and that's basically our strategy.
Fantastic. Now there's a couple of changes coming up in Placer County that are going to require some additional resources or additional monies to be able to take care of. As I understand it, some of the payments that we make to CalPERS will probably be increasing or are projected to increase. And then we also have a new jail that has been built already at the Justice Center that isn't staffed yet. And if we're going to staff that, that will require some resources. Where do you see that income coming from to do those things?
The county, fortunately, the whole time that I've been on the board has focused intensely on sound fiscal management. And we weathered 2008 extremely well, but it's because of our conservative fiscal policies. Prior to 2008, for example, we had contingency reserves targeted to be 5% of our operating requirements. And when 2008 actually was approaching, our staff saw that our assessed valuations, the rate of increasing was declining. It wasn't going up as quickly as it had in the boom days. Right.
Responded to the second derivative.
Right, so we did things like implement a hiring freeze, and we only had to lay off about 10 people in all of the county. Our workforce is significantly smaller, but we put that hiring freeze in place, and through retirements and people moving from one position to another, we only had to lay off really people who didn't have transferable skills, like building inspectors when there wasn't a need for those. So we need to continue having those kinds of budgetary practices. And in fact, one of the things that we've done since 2008 is we always had a balanced budget that focused intensely on a year and even 2 years out, but we formalized as a part of policy at the board that we will have a 5-year budget. And that is currently being developed as we speak. As it turned out, we used only about half of our contingency reserves after 2008, and now they're back up to the 5% that we need. And recently, our bond rating, by the way, was just increased by Standard & Poor's as a result of our fiscal management, and actually the expectation that we're going to continue that, and the county's focus on seeking to have a diverse county with a mix of good jobs. So to answer your question, you just have to bite the bullet and make the expenses match the revenues, and you have to set your priorities and make the tough decisions to live within your means. So, for example, one of my favorite programs has been Placer Legacy, which the conservation plan exists under that umbrella. And we were setting aside a tiny portion of our general funds for acquisitions of open space. Our greatest achievement is Hidden Falls Park between Lincoln and Auburn, and very much appreciated by our residents. But we discontinued putting money into that reserve so that we could continue our levels of service for public protection, road maintenance, and other things that frankly are higher priorities, essential priorities for government. So we have to have that kind of perspective. As we go forward, we need to continue with that kind of discipline, and sometimes those budget cuts are just tough and they hurt. But you have to be disciplined and do those kinds of things. As it relates to things like the jail and
Yeah, how did we miss that? Was that a surprise, or is it just something that we were not planning on staffing until later?
We were planning on opening it early, but actually it's very expensive. It will be, in the long run, it will be a great amenity, particularly for the cities, because the jail is in closer proximity to the city population, so they won't have to drive all the way up to Auburn to carry prisoners that they arrest. But we postponed opening it because of 2008. It was one of the methods by which we could continue our levels of service, and our current jail was serving us fine. So we just postponed opening it. We will open it this year. And with the state's realignment, it'll be critical. Right, we'll need that space. And we'll need to manage that population in a way that's different and more progressive so that cost doesn't swamp us. As it relates to things like retirement, we have also negotiated with our labor groups a change in not only the retirement benefit, but participation by the employees in that system. They're paying more than they did before.
So our payments to future retirement plans should be a little bit less.
Yes.
Should be reduced.
Right.
Now, we're also projecting on the positive side some increased revenues for the county from the Middle Fork project after the 50-year lease is expired. What do you think should be done with the additional income that we expect to be coming into the county?
Well, the board has grappled with that on several occasions at hearings, and fortunately all five of us appear to be essentially on the same page, so it doesn't look like we're going to have to argue that. We have to refine it some, but we are looking at using those monies, even though they're going to continue during the 50-year term of the license, and hopefully thereafter. Hopefully people after me will renegotiate that license also, because in a nutshell, by the way, for the viewers, with the Middle Fork project that you mentioned, the county receives half of the profits now from those energy sales of that project. So
yeah, let me add that we've got a hydroelectric power plant that you're talking about at that Middle Fork project, which when I first heard about that made me pretty darn proud that that hydroelectric plant produces almost as much energy as Placer County uses.
Right.
So in a very real way, you can say proudly that Placer County is pretty much a green county in terms of producing clean, green power.
Renewable energy.
Renewable energy to meet its needs.
Right.
Pretty amazing.
Right, and it's a great financial resource. So we will receive, again, depending on weather patterns in the future, huge amounts of profits. Both half of it will go to the water agency and half of it will go to the county's general fund. Right. So the policies that are emerging will look at those funds as if they're a one-time payment. So we will not use those monies to fund our operations.
So it's not an operating budget kind of thing?
Correct. It will be used for enhancements. So for example, if we think it's necessary to participate in some infrastructure development out in the Sunset Industrial area that will help us attract primary wage earner jobs because it makes it easier for those companies to locate here, those would be the kinds of things we would invest in. We also want to invest in things in a collaborative way with our other government partners, but particularly our city partners, so that these things benefit all of the residents of Placer County. But we'll be looking at it as if somebody gave us a bunch of money one time, how do we spend that money, not to pay our bills on a day-to-day basis,
Right.
but to generate a return on investment on into the future forever.
Are there other projects or other things that you'd like our voters and our viewers to be aware of, and why you feel that you're the person that should be elected for a 6th term for the County Board of Supervisors?
Well, thank you. Obviously, I've been here a long time, and I have tremendous passion for Placer County. One of the most positive influences in my life was my parents deciding to move up here and to be able to grow up in a very interesting but tight-knit community, graduate from Lincoln High School and have a chance to come back. So being a part of public service in Placer County is not a difficult thing for me because the county has been so good to me and my family. But I have that institutional perspective and history that has extended over a lot of change, but with a vision of the fact that I think Placer County has an opportunity to grow a fair amount and not lose its appeal and the rich quality of life that we enjoy so much. In college, educationally, my background is in finance, and that has served me extremely well, I think, as it relates to dealing with the county budget and setting our priorities and expressing that discipline that we talked about earlier. And we want to continue that. We're coming out of the horrible recession of 2008. It's not great yet. Obviously, our unemployment is too high. But we still need to be fiscally disciplined and think in terms of how we can maintain our levels of service and not squander money, but create a situation where there are dividends for future generations. It's challenging, but it's interesting to me, and it's consistent with my background. Also, in that my background is inherently in business and business education, I think I have a lot to offer as it relates to helping solicit primary wage earner jobs and creating a plan for the county and a vision so that it's easier for companies like the next Hewlett-Packard and
To come here.
the small companies to come here in particular. Recently, the Formica facility, which actually opened up when I was in high school, and again, friends of mine worked there their whole careers and retired from Formica, and they created great jobs for a long period of time before, unfortunately, they closed down when they retracted and went back east. But that facility has been purchased by a developer who specializes in recruiting those kinds of companies. And he seems to be very capable. We've had several meetings, and I think I can listen to what his vision is and have that be translated well into county policy that makes it more comfortable and better for him to bring those kinds of investments to Placer County.
Sounds terrific. Thank you so much, Supervisor Weygandt, for being with us today, and good luck in your race. Let me just also add for our viewers that since this is a two-person race with only 2 people running, this race will be decided in the June primary.
Right.
And so to all of our viewers, let me emphasize once more, it is imperative that you vote in the June primary. Many things get decided in the June primary itself. With that, thank you once again, and to all of our viewers, good night.